Hello everyone, my name is Ankit Jain and I welcome you all to my channel Tech Journey with Ankit. In today's video, we will be doing the revision of all the OAuth flows that we have discussed in this playlist. I want to create one video where I will be doing the comparison of all the OAuth flows along with the use cases and the best practices that should be followed so that you folks will have a one complete summary or one complete guide to decide when to go for what kind of a flow under what all different scenarios and also what all different terminologies are involved in the OAuth 2.0. Now to get started, in case you folks like to have one-to-one connect with me, you can click on the link available in the video description for the top mat. As soon as you will navigate to the top mat, you will be landed on this page where you will have the two options. Option number one, to have one-to-one connect with me over the call to discuss any Salesforce queries or any Salesforce support that you folks needed in your Salesforce journey. Moreover, you can also explore a few of the digital products which are available on my channel like the LWC guide, data cloud guide, admin guide, as well as this interview prep guide. I like to specifically talk about this interview prep guide, which have more than 500 plus questions on the different modules of the Salesforce, including the Agentforce, admin, Apex, LWC, integration flows, as well as the scenario based question. In this guide, you will get the scenario based question for the freshers as well as for the experienced professional. You can also check out the different testimonials which I do have available on this TopMate channel as well, so that you will get an idea what all these different products are and how well they can help you in your Salesforce preparation. You can also explore a few of the Udemy courses that I have recently published. The first one here is the real world project, where I will be demonstrating how you can build the project from the scratch using the error and the logging framework, how you can go and build a robust Salesforce application and automate it using the complex business processes, again with both clicks and codes. In this project, I will be showing you how you can use your admin skills, Apex skills, LWC skills, integration skills at one project. I believe this project will be helpful in case you want to go and implement a real world scenario for your portfolio to demonstrate the data modeling, security part, flows, triggers, asynchronous apex, as well as the test classes. Coming to the another course that I have recently published and which is highly rated on the Udemy as well with respect to the Data 360 or Data Cloud Consultant course. In this course, I will be talking each and everything that you should be knowing about the data cloud from the fundamental level to the advanced concept. In this course, you will understand from the very basics the importance of the data cloud, terminologies which are involved in the data cloud, key components in the data cloud, along with each and everything that we do at the different stages of the data cloud as well. This course is again, it's not a theoretical driven course, it's a scenario based course where I will be ingesting the data from the multiple sources and then doing the harmonization, identity resolution, segmentation, as well as activation of that data too. Again, this is the course I believe that you should be going for if you are planning to appear for the Data 360 consultant certification as well. Now coming back to the scenario that we have to discuss for today is the OAuth 2.0. Again, as I said, I will be revising each and everything. I want to make one complete video for you folks to make the decision when to go for the OAuth flow. So what is typically the OAuth flow? If I had to look for the one-liner definition, the OAuth flow is something which is solving the problem of navigating to the application or accessing the application's data on the user's behalf without exposing their credential. For example, in case there is one another application and that application wants to access my data, but I don't want to share my password with that application. There can be multiple reasons I don't trust that particular application. So how I can go and do the authentication and the authorization in that scenario? This is the typical challenge that the OAuth 2.0 flow is solving, where it is allowing the third party application to access the data on the user's behalf, and the key part here is without ever exposing their credential. So there are four components which are involved in the OAuth flow. First one here is the resource owner. Resource owner is the entity that grants the access to the protected resources. We do have the authorization server. This is the entity which is responsible to authenticate the resource owner, and more importantly, this is the entity which will issue the access token after the appropriate consent has been provided. What is access token? I will talk about it down the line. Then the another entity that we do have here is the client application. This is the application using which the users will be requesting the data. And finally, we do have the resource server. This is the location where the actual data is available, from where the resource owner wants to access the data. So in a nutshell, resource owner will be using the client application, doing the authorization with the help of the authorization server to access the data which is available on the resource server. How this can be done? Let's try to understand a generic flow of the OAuth 2.0. So resource owner will be requesting the data from the authorization server. It is providing the grant access as well as providing the appropriate consent. Then the grant access, then the authorization server will be issuing the access token. This is the critical parameter using which the resource server will identify whether the resource owner will have the appropriate access to access the data or not. Now this access token will be presented to the resource server, and then along with the requested data, and finally the resource server will go and provide the requested resource as well. This is how the typical flow of the OAuth 2.0 flow will look like. But again, under the OAuth 2.0, as we have discussed in our playlist as well, there are lots of different flows, and most of the times it is confusing when to go for what kind of a flow. The important factor to make that decision when to go for what kind of a flow, it depends on your client. Like, can your client securely protect a secret? Based on this particular answer, you can easily decide what kind of flow that you should be going for. So let's say I do have one client application which is requesting the access to the resources on the user's behalf. Now this is the question that can be answered. Can your client securely protect a secret? If the answer to this is yes, my client has a secure backend. In that scenario, you can go for the flows like the authorization code flow, where your client is capable to store the secret key. Typically, it is used whenever we have to go and do the integration with the web server apps like the Amazon or Azure. We go for this kind of a flow. Another one here is my client can save the secret key? Answer to this is no. Typically, the public clients or the mobile application, they are not capable to go and store the private key. In that scenario, we go and use the authorization code flow, but along with the PKCE flow. So with the help of this combination, we can go and use the code verifier and the code challenger concept to prevent the client secret. Another flow that we go for is the jot bearer flow. This is the flow which is used whenever we want to do the server to server integration. There is a scenario where you don't even have the client coming up in the form of web application or in the form of app, but you want to go and do the integration between the two servers like the Azure server, or you want to do the integration between the middleware to the Salesforce or MuleSoft to Salesforce. In such scenarios, we go and use the jot bearer flow. So based on the client, whether it can securely protect your secret key or not, this is the key factor with the help of which what kind of OAuth flow that you should be using will be driven. Now, why this is important? Why it is important to go and select the correct type of a flow? Because if you are selecting the correct type of a flow, you will have the seamless user experience, you will have the better security, as well as you will have the future proof integration as well. In case you are not selecting it, in case you have making a mistake of selecting the correct OAuth flow, then definitely the possibility of having the security vulnerabilities. You will have the broken integration as well as the compliance failure. This is the line that I typically refer whenever I talk about the OAuth. It's a framework, it's not a single method where the context is everything. Based on what kind of client that you will be using, based on what kind of integrations that you have to perform, accordingly you will be deciding what kind of OAuth flow you will go for. Now coming up to the different roles, I already talked about these different roles like the client, resource owner, resource server, and the authorization server. These are the four different roles which are available whenever you are working on the OAuth. Now there are two terminologies that we frequently used whenever we worked on the OAuth. First one here is the access token. Access token, it is nothing but a short-lived token which is the key to access your data. Another token that we very frequently use here is the refresh token. It's a long-lived credential whenever you want to obtain a new access token, because this access token, as I mentioned, is a short lived, but you want to have the new access token automatically coming up for you. In that scenario, you will go and use this refresh token which is used to obtain a new access tokens as well. Now we will do a quick walkthrough of the different OAuth flows that we have discussed in our playlist so that you will have the one liner with you for each type of flow. The first one that we discussed in very detailed in our playlist, that is the authorization code flow. This is the flow that you should be using whenever you are doing the integration with the web applications. For example, the applications which are hosted on the Heroku, AWS or Azure, which are capable to store the client secret key, you will go for the authorization code flow. The prerequisite for this here is you must have the backend server that can securely store the client secret key. Security wise, this is highly secured and the most secured interactive flow when the user has been involved. Again, whenever you are using this flow, you will get both the types of token, access token as well as the refresh token. Coming up to the end-to-end flow, how it will looks like, your resource owner will go and look for the data from the resource server by using the client application. So the client application will send the request to the authorization server along with the authorization code. Then once you have the authorization code, then the client web server will send the authorization code along with the client secret to the authorization server. And here, as I said, the authorization server should be responsible to store that client secret. Once that is there, then the authorization server will send you the access token, and using that access token, you can access the data here from the resource server. Moving to the next flow that we do have here is the public client flow. This is the flow that we typically use whenever we are building the single page application which is running in a browser, or we are building a mobile app. The challenge with this type of a flow here is your clients are not capable enough to store a client secret key. And if the client secret key is not stored or it is exposed to the end user in the form of a browser, then definitely it will be a security breach. Then how you can go and handle this kind of a scenario? The old way we used to do this by using the implicit flow. Again, the way this flow will work here is access token is written directly to the browsers in the URL hash fragment after the user authenticates the response type is equal to token. But as I said, access token is directly exposed in the browser, right? It will again cause the security breaches because access token are easily leaked via browser history and HTTP reference header. Token ingestion, no mechanism to bind the token to the client, making it invulnerable for the cross-site request forgery as well. And again, IETF also does not recommend that you should go and use this kind of a flow. So this is the kind of a flow which is kind of a retired. There are few projects which do use this flow because they have not upgraded it. But coming up to the security part, this flow is not considered as the secured flow. For any new implementation, it is not recommended that you should go and use this implicit grant flow. But when you are going for the interview or preparing for the cert, definitely you must have the knowledge for this flow as well. Now, what is the replacement for this flow? What is the replacement for our anti-hero? And the new hero here is the authorization code along with the PKCE. You should go and use this flow whenever you want to build the modern single page application. You want to build the native mobile application or the desktop app. And in this particular flow, you can go and use the two important terms, that is the code verifier and the code challenger. Here the client is able to generate and store a temporary code verifier for the duration of the flow, and then it can be validated against the code challenger. So the typical flow of this particular, it will look like is something like this. The client will generate the code verifier, the real password. It creates the public code challenge by hashing the verifier. So by using the hashing algorithm against that code verifier, a code challenger will be created, and this code challenge is sent to the initial authorization request. After the user approves, the client gets a temporary authorization code. This is again the same what we have discussed in the first flow. Here also you will have the authorization code. Then the client send the authorization code, and very important part, that is the code verifier in the secure post request. Like in the implicit flow, we are doing everything in the browser, but here we are doing the secure post request, and whatever we are getting from the server is the access token. The good part here is the code verifier, it ensures that it matches the original code challenge, providing that proving that saving the same client made both the request here. So this is again a kind of a secured flow that should be used whenever your client is not capable enough to store the secret key. And as I said, we are solving this problem by using the code verifier as well as the code challenger, where the code verifier is the secret key and the code challenge is something which is public that can be sent for the authentication. This is the quick difference between both the type of flow. Here, the access token is a part of URL fragment, but as I said, in this particular flow, we are using the code challenger as well as the code sequence. Here, access token is delivered directly in the browser's URL fragment, making it vulnerable to leakage and replay attacks. However, the temporary code is written via the browser here as well, but the sensitive access token is exchanged over a more secure post request here, right? Whatever the authorization code that you are getting, it will be written via the browser, but access token is coming up in the form of a body of the post request, keeping it out of the URL, which is protected by the PKCE mechanism too. These are the flows that we will use, like the authorization code flow, implicit flow, or the authorization code flow plus PKCE whenever we do have the client application. But what if we have to do the server to server communication? In case of server to server communication, the flow that is recommended here is the jot bearer flow. For the integrations that do not involve real-time user interaction, for example, in case you have to go and do the integration with the middleware, ETL tools, CI/CD pipeline interacting with the API, in such scenarios, you can go and use the jot bearer flow. The core concept of the jot bearer flow is something like this. Instead of user logging in the client application and providing its identity by creating the jot assertion, this jot will contain the different types of information. I will talk about this jot information in the next slide. But this jot contains the claims. Whatever the information that the jot contains, it call at the claims about the client and user, and the user it's acting on behalf of, it is digitally signed with a private key. I have explained all these complete things in detail on my jot flow, how the claim will be signed and how the token can be requested, and finally the response can be derived out of it. This is the core concept of the jot bearer flow. Again, kind of a cheat sheet here. It's a secure server to server integration. The key part here is there is no user involvement here. Prerequisite: client can securely manage a private key, and the auth server has the corresponding public certificate, because here we deal in the form of certificate. The consent that has been provided, it must be pre-authorized by an admin, and this pre-authorized consent will be recorded in the form of the certificate here. Next thing here is security wise, it is considered high for trusted system to system integration. Tokens that will be returned here is the access token. This particular flow does not return any refresh token. Coming up to the jot bearer flow, as I said, we go and create the claim. So as a part of very first step, what the client system will do, it will go and create the claim. Whenever they are creating the claim, they have to feed the multiple information in the claim, like who is the issuer, what is the subscriber. Subscriber means nothing but the username of the user the client is acting for. Third one here is the audience, the URL of the authorization server. It typically a sales. In case you are integrating with the Salesforce, it will be the domain URL of the Salesforce server. And finally, here we have to go and put the expiration timestamp, which is coming up in the form of the Unix. These are the four information together will form a claim, and then client will sign the claim, right, using the private key. I have shown in my video how to generate the private key, how you can do the signing. Everything has been explained in detail in the jot flow video. Once the client signs the entire JWT payload, then the token request will be sent to the token endpoint. And while sending the request to the token endpoint, we have to use the grant type followed by the assertion. And the authorization server will validate the signature and finally here issues the access token. This is the typical flow of the jot bearer flow that needs to be implemented, where you have to first create the claim, then the signing, then you will send the request along with this grant type and the assertion, and finally you will have the response. There's another type of a flow that I have personally seen people do use very heavily, but it is not recommended from the Salesforce, and that is nothing but your username password flow or the owner password credential flow. Salesforce have the clear guideline that you should not use this flow, because under this flow you are sharing the username and the password to directly authenticate the user, and this is completely voiding the purpose of the OAuth server. You are directly handles the plain text user credential. It is a high possibility of creating a massive attack vector. It will break the OAuth principle and the no MFA support will be required. Even the IETF does not recommend that we should be using this kind of a flow. Again, I have seen many times people do use this flow for the testing purpose, and that's quite okay. But in the enterprises, in the production, you cannot go, or you should not use this kind of a flow, because it will expose your username and the password in the form of the plain text. Now, this is the complete guide that I will suggest that you should have a screenshot, which will give you the overview of what all different types of flows that we have discussed. Like we have discussed about the web server flow, authorization code flow, and the implicit flow. These are the flows that should be used with the user interaction. Without user interaction, you have the jot flow. There's another flow that is the sample bearer flow, but most of the times we do use the jot flow only. Under the jot flow, as I said, we use the digital signature for identity. There is no user involvement here, or the client secret will be needed. Another flow which is quite unsecure but people do use it, that is the username and the password flow. These are the recommend types of the flows based on what kind of operation that you have to perform. I'm just trying to make it more simplify so that you will have the one single snapshot to understand when to go for what kind of a flow. Now this is the decision guide that also you can refer while making the decision. Like when the authorization has been begin, is the user activity present? If the answer is no, then it's quite easy. Use the server to server flow, and your option here is the jot flow or the SAML bearer flow. But in case the user interaction is needed, then another follow-up question that you have to ask, whether the client can securely store the secret key or not. If the answer is no, go for the code with PKCE. If the answer is yes, go for the authorization code flow with secret. But make sure that you are not using the legacy grant flow. It is not recommended. Moreover, you should also not be using the username and the password flow whenever you are working on the OAuth. I hope this video gave you the complete idea of what is OAuth flow, how to use the OAuth flow, and in what scenarios you should go for what OAuth flow. I do recommend, please don't stick to one video, go over the complete playlist whenever the time permits you to have the fair idea about the OAuth flows.